Hello, my fellow musicians. My name is Noah Krishnaswamy, and I am currently a junior at the East Lyme High School. And on behalf of the East Lyme Tri-Am Music Honor Society, I hope you guys are doing well and staying interested in music. I am currently playing the alto saxophone in the concert band, and today I'm going to show you guys how to set up your mouthpiece and how to take care of it once you're done playing. Alright, well, let's get into it. Alright then, so right here I have my alto saxophone, and currently it's completely put together, and this is how it would look when you're ready to play it. So the main pieces of the alto saxophone here are the main part with all the keys and pads. You have your neck piece right here, which is the second part, and you have your mouthpiece, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So let me take that off here, and let me put that instrument down. Alright, so right here we have our mouthpiece, and in my opinion, this is the most important part of the saxophone because without it you cannot make a sound. And well, let's get right into it. So the first things first, when you look at the mouthpiece, you have the metal cap on top. Sometimes it's plastic, depends on the type of mouthpiece that you have. And for me, it's this brass cap right here, and this is a very important part because it protects the mouthpiece from any damage, specifically the reed, which we'll get into. And then you have what you will be playing on when you're actually practicing or in a concert or whatever. So right away when you look at it, you see that there are three main parts of it. You have the metal clamp that goes around it, you have this wooden piece right here, and you have the main sometimes rubber, sometimes glass, sometimes metal mouthpiece base. And well, when you take them apart, as I'm doing right now, you unscrew these screws on the what we call the ligature. It's this metal piece, and you have the loose piece of wood right here, which is called a reed, and you have the main mouthpiece. So first things first, I'm going to tell you right now that there are so many different variations of mouthpieces, reeds, even ligatures have many variations. Currently I have a Selmer main bass mouthpiece here. There are other ones like this Yamaha one right here. It also depends on your instrument, so they're all different types. And then you have this ligature right here, which is for me just this metal silver one right here. And you have a reed, and there's so many different variations for your reed, and we'll go into that in just a second. All right, so those are all your components of the mouthpiece, and then I'll now go into how you set up and take care of it. All right then, so now that you know the different components of the mouthpiece, we can go into the individual setup of each of those components. So recall that there were three main components of the saxophone mouthpiece. You have the reed, or the wooden part right here. You also have the ligature, which holds the mouthpiece together. It wraps the reed and the mouthpiece together. It looks like this. And then you have the main part referred to as the mouthpiece right here. So first things first, let's go into the setup of the reed itself. So the first thing you're probably thinking to yourself is, what do you really have to set up with the reed? The reed is just a piece of wood. Don't you just put it onto the mouthpiece? No, actually, there's a lot of things that have to go into the setup of the reed just by itself. So let's go into that. But before we do that, I wanted to go into the different variations of the reed and even the different variations of the mouthpiece and the ligature. So, as you now know, there are many different variations of the mouthpiece, including the reed, the ligature, and even the main part itself. So, going into the different variations of the reed, the variation tends to be in the size, in the level of the reed, and the brand. So, when going into the variation of the brand, right, for example, right now I am using a Van Doren reed, right? That usually takes time or trial and error. So you want to try different reeds, make sure which one feels right to you. And for me, these Van Doren ones have worked well, but there are also different brands like Rico, for example. So going into now the levels of the reed, the levels tend to be on a scale from around 1.5-ish to around 4. So the lower the level, the easier the reed is to play. What I mean by that is that the vibration in the reed tends to be easier. You make a sound much easier in the mouthpiece. And that usually helps beginning players to get a sound out and to begin learning how to shape your mouth to make the best sound you can. So, but then the higher level ones tend to make your tone a little bit better. They're a little bit harder to play, so you can get into higher notes, higher ranges, and all of that. So that typically comes with experience. And then there are different sizes. So as you know, I play the alto saxophone. But that's not the only saxophone out there. There's, of course, the tenor saxophone, there's the bari saxophone, and the soprano saxophone. So when we go into the alto saxophone, there's a specific size mouthpiece, a specific size reed, and a specific size ligature that all fit together. A bari saxophone mouthpiece will not fit on an alto saxophone mouthpiece, and a reed for the bari saxophone will not fit on an alto saxophone mouthpiece. So they all fit together. When you're purchasing a reed and a mouthpiece and a ligature, you want to make sure that they're all for the same type of instrument, your instrument. And that is about it for the reed. When you go into the mouthpiece itself, as I said before, I'm using a Selmer mouthpiece. There's also Yamaha mouthpieces and all sorts of different ones. That also comes with preference. There are even different like materials like metal and rubber and even glass out there. And the same applies to ligatures as well. Make sure you have the right size and the right one that fits for you. So now we can go into the setup of the reed itself. So the first time that you open the reed box, you'll find that the reeds are all in a package similar to this one. Plastic case that protects the reed while it's in the box. So when you take the reed out, you'll slide it out just like this. And you'll first off notice that the reed has a skinnier part and a thicker part that's more rounded. So you always want to hold the reed by the thicker part right here, because reeds, they tend to be very delicate and they can break really easily. I can show you a reed that has broken a while ago that I have right here. You'll notice that the tip has been chipped a little bit. This happened very easily, and this will tend to happen a lot if you're just beginning to play. So to avoid that from happening, you always want to hold the reed from the thicker end, just to make sure that doesn't happen. So now the reed itself, it tends to play a lot better when it's wet. So what most players will do to make it wet, maybe at the beginning of band practice or in a concert, you'll just put it in their mouth like this and really make sure it's wet. They'll usually hold it for about 15 seconds. Another way to make the reed wet is simply to take a glass of water like this one right here and then just plop it in like that. And then wait another 15 seconds just like that. So once you know now that the reed is wet, it's been soaked in properly, you can now get ready to put it on the mouthpiece itself. So now let's go into the setup of the ligature and mouthpiece themselves. So as far as the mouthpiece itself goes, there's not as much setup to it until you get the reed on it. With the ligature, you want to make sure that the screws on the ligature itself are very loose, very open, and that it can slide on the mouthpiece very well, just like this. So once you've done that, right, you can take the reed that is now wet, you can just slide it on to the mouthpiece like that. And then now is one of the most important parts to the setup of the mouthpiece. How you place the reed on the mouthpiece itself is super important. If the reed is too far above the top, it will not work well. It's very risky, it'll chip, it won't even sound that good. And now, if you put it way too low, to the point you'll see too much of the mouthpiece itself, it won't play that well either. You want to make sure that it's right at the tip and it's just covering the top, so very nicely lined up. And you want to make sure that it's evenly centered, just like this and like that. You'll notice that since the reed is wet, it will stay on just like this. Now comes the part where you put in the ligature. So depending on the type of ligature that you have, for me, the screws are on top. You want to place it just like that. Maybe your screws will be on the bottom depending on the type, but they tend to go on just like this. Make sure that the smaller part is to the front and the bigger part of the ligature is to the back. And then once it's beyond the line that is on the reed, as you can observe right there, there's a small line right there. It's a little bit hard to see on camera. You can now screw in the ligature, and you want to make sure that the front one is still tight, but not super tight to the point where you cannot unscrew it. And you want to make sure that the back one is also the same. Make sure that it's screwed on tight, but not so tight. You can't unscrew it. Just like that. And once you've done that, you have your mouthpiece all set up and ready to put on to the instrument. All right, so now you might be asking yourself, what do I need to do now when I'm done practicing? Do I have to take apart my mouthpiece, or can I just put the case on and call it a day? Well, so the best thing to do when you're done playing is to take apart your mouthpiece again, store away your reed, and then put your mouthpiece and ligature back into the case. Otherwise, if you keep it just together like some people do, then the mouthpiece itself could either grow bacteria, which is not fun. You could damage the reed itself. The reed never really gets put on or off, and then you have to take it off to make it wet again when you play again. All of that, it just isn't that fun. So what you do is similar to when you put it on. You want to first take off the ligature. So you're going to unscrew the screws on the ligature just like this. When it's loose enough to slide off, that's when you're going to slide it off, of course. Just like that. Make sure not to hit the reed, otherwise the reed could break. And then you'll notice that the reed itself is still stuck to the mouthpiece. So some people will tend to just go straight to the tip and want to take it off like that. I don't recommend doing that because that way you could risk breaking your reed, and then you couldn't use your reed again. The experience will go down. So you want to grab it by the bottom right here, take it off just like that. And then if you have your case still from before, you're going to put it into your case just like that. Or if you have a case dedicated to like your reeds to package it, you can slide it into there and store it like that, just like this. I have a ProTech case right here, which I'm trying to get open, and then you can just slide it in with your other reeds, just like that. And then you're probably asking, what do I do with the ligature and the reed? I still have the case right here. So the easiest thing to do, which is what I do as well, is just put the ligature back on as if there was a reed, but there isn't. And then you can just put the case on top, still protecting the mouthpiece and the ligature, just like that. And you can put it in the dedicated spot in your case. And same with the ProTech or whatever case you're using. If not, you can use just your normal case. So a quick recap of what we learned in today's video. We learned how to assemble the mouthpiece mainly without breaking the reed or chipping it in any way. And then also the preparation going into the reed, the ligature, and the mouthpiece itself so that you have the best experience possible. We also learned how to disassemble the mouthpiece, making sure that the reed is not broken, and also putting away the mouthpiece and ligature. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I hope you have learned something, and have a good rest of your day.